Hi, and welcome to the first episode of Phoenix Talks, a podcast that Diane and I are going to be bringing to you. And we're going to be talking about various different topics that we just kind of decide we want to talk about from week to week or whenever we decide to do these. Hi, I'm Micah, Wolf Grant, and joining me is none other than Diane DeBiasi. Both of us are so excited to bring these conversations to you. And that's kind of how Phoenix Talks came about, because she had posted something on Facebook that just really resonated with me, and I just had to respond. I believe it was about forgiveness. And the post that she put on Facebook was just missing one vital detail that I felt like I needed to add. So I did. Yeah. And she's so excited that she's like, hey, what would you think about having a podcast? I was like, okay. So that's basically, and then after a 3-hour conversation, we had never really had the opportunity to sit down and talk. We met in acquaintance level several weeks prior to, but we had never really had a chance to just sit and chat and get to know each other. And we are so on the same page in so many different ways that we decided to bring Phoenix Talks to you and do it as often as we can and just have these conversations with you. So with that, today we are going to be talking about different levels of how validation can be a good thing or a bad thing. We don't know exactly where the conversation's going to go because it's mostly just going to be off the cuff. We're going to stay on topic though, pardon my tripping. But I'm going to turn it over to Diane to get us rolling on where we want to go with validation.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, I'm Diane. I am a life coach and holistic practitioner. And you can look me up on my Facebook page, etc. But yes, I love having these conversations. And, you know, in my response to your comment, I validated you because, yeah, we can only cover so much territory in a meme. And I love the meat.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I love when the meat and potatoes show up in the comments because, yes, let's have a conversation. Yes, let's bring this information to the forefront. That one was actually on forgiveness, that whole post. But we were talking about validation because there's so many different types of validation, including the healthy kind, which we did for each other in our little comment section. And there's unhealthy validation. So I thought we could open up a discussion about that, what that looks like, why it's important to know the difference and to have healthy validation and to know what to avoid so that you're not seeking unhealthy validation. You know, and of course, we could start this discussion in any direction. We can stick straight to the actual validation, or we can just go straight to the core. Like, why is it important? It's important because we exist, but we know we exist because someone else sees us. So in that deep level, we need validation in order to understand how we are presenting ourselves in this world. And everyone's got their own version of what that looks like in their experience. So that's where we have to now discern, okay, well, is this good or is this not so good? So let's start off with healthy validation, since we started there with our comment section. And now this beautiful acquaintance.
Everybody might want to. Yeah, and we apologize. There's going to be lag in between, and I may freeze up from time to time. That's because of first world technology problems. But one of the things that everybody should understand when it comes to validation is that the source of the feeling of validation comes from a feeling that you get. And when you get a good feeling about something, you feel it on a physiological level. And there are so many times that we receive that good feeling based on feedback, something that we've done, that it's such a good feeling that anything else can, we let it turn sour and into a toxic situation. And that's when validation seeking can actually become an addiction.
Right.
Because we need those hormones released. We need that chemical release from the brain to say, yes, what they said feels good. Yes, that is something that this body needs because this body has been trained to understand that feeling.
Yes. So how do we know that it is healthy validation? So, and we're going to go right back into that feeling of feeling safe and feeling heard. And I believe that does start within ourselves. We do need to feel validated from ourselves. We do need to know ourselves so well that we are firm in what we're feeling and understand ourselves well enough to understand that we aren't in need of the external validation. That doesn't mean that it's not nice to hear when it is in alignment with who you are authentically. And I think that's where it counts. Yeah.
Absolutely. When it becomes something that you get upset if you don't receive the positive feedback or feedback at all, because I have come across many people in my journeys who just don't feel heard. And that's a form of validation. If you don't feel heard, then depending on the level of mental health in that person and authentic and genuine understanding of where they are inside can result in disastrous outbursts from those people.
I missed that last part because of lag. I'm sorry.
When you start recognizing, that's okay. I kind of saw it glitch, so, but it can result in dramatic outbursts when somebody has reached a level of needing to be heard. And don't feel it. And that's when we know it's become toxic. That's when we know it's become unhealthy.
Yeah.
When it's sought after.
Well, since we touched upon that unhealthy part, well, we know where that comes from. That comes from whatever experiences we've had throughout our lives, whether it happens really, really, really early on and continues. But ultimately, if we do not feel like we are heard throughout life, we're going to display certain survival responses that are going to lead to seeking external validation. And then we also have to take into consideration that perhaps not everyone who's seeking external validation realizes that they're doing it, and then why they're doing it, and then how to fix it. So healthy's got to be from a valid source who you feel safe with and who is expressing a truth that is in alignment with your core being and your authentic self. Unhealthy is when it don't feel right and when it feels like it's coming from a place of lack and you seeking to fill that void. So let's talk about how to fix it, how to fix that need to feel validated in an external form. And then what you need to do in order to feel validated from yourself. You want to touch upon that part?
The hardest part is being honest. Learning to have that internal validation is being honest with yourself, that you are enough, that you are worth it. This touches on so many different archetypes or types of emotions that we experience based on other external factors that we have internalized. Now that's a lot to unpack in that one sentence.
Absolutely.
That's a lot to unpack.
Ultimately, we need to recognize. Mhm. Absolutely. And I think the most
many
important
people are
piece of
in
it.
therapy for years.
Wait, one more time.
But many people are in therapy for years trying to unpack that one aspect of liking themselves.
Right. Right. And let's talk about
And
that
that's
for a
the
second,
key.
because how do you get to like yourself so that you validate yourself? You have to get to know yourself. You can't get to know yourself without being honest with yourself. So you really have to analyze everything in your experience and determine what is in alignment with you and what actually resonates with you and what is part of the programming. Did you receive bad intel? Is it faulty malware that's installed in here from your environment and your experiences throughout life? You have to give yourself permission to allow yourself to explore, do I really like this? And is that how I really feel about myself? And what's the truth here? You nailed it with the truth piece, because ultimately, if you're not honest with yourself, you're not going to get to know yourself, and you're not going to be able to not seek external validation, because you're depending on others to tell you who you are, and that's not in alignment with who your true authentic self is. Self-discovery
Mhm.
is key, and that comes from authenticity and truth. You nailed it.
And it's also scary.
Yeah.
And it's also scary.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
people are so used to, too many people are too used to being stuck in that discomfort that it becomes comfortable to stay there.
Right.
So they don't recognize or realize what validation levels. Good grief, we could pin that on so many different problems that we have
Hmm.
put labels on,
Right.
of
Right.
that becoming an addiction that we don't even realize that we have because we're so comfortable seeking it.
Hmm. Right.
Anything else is uncomfortable. Being honest with yourself is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins says, change
Yeah.
is not comfortable.
Yeah.
Change
Let's talk about
only
why it's not.
happens through honesty.
Yeah, let's talk about why it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable because you're judging yourself. Ultimately, the programming makes you believe that it's going to be highly painful and uncomfortable. As soon as you understand that you're judging
Mhm.
yourself, and you can drop all judgments, you can drop other people's expectations, you can drop expectations that you've decided that you were going to adopt for yourself. You stop judging yourself, and you start viewing yourself through the eyes of compassion, through understanding, through grace, and you allow yourself permission to just observe your human experience for what it is, and you validate yourself and all the ways you handled your challenging experiences, and in what ways you've proved the affirmation that you're trying to receive validation on, and you prove that to yourself through your own experience.
Time and again.
Yeah.
And it all stems from thoughts that are stored into
Hmm.
memory. So we can make a decision to change. We can make a
Yeah.
decision that we want to not have to seek validation, or that we want to, and I'm going to throw it out there to a different level of seeking the change or making the decision to change your diet, to quit an addiction to a chemical substance, to lose weight. to learn something. You can make all of these decisions, and they're strong. And there's decisiveness behind it. However, human beings experience triggers. Human beings release hormones that lock into our bodies, into our muscles, into our very cells.
Yes.
During an experience that we don't know it happens until we move a certain way or we feel a certain way. And then all of a sudden, the decisions that we made get clouded over with that trigger. And we feel like we're starting back from square one.
Yep.
Too many times. And this is why so many people stay in what's comfortable.
Right. Right. And that might just be because they haven't yet learned how to move through their triggers. Should we help folks with that?
Right.
Let's talk about it. My first step, step one.
And keep it with the validation too.
Yes. Yeah. And it all ties together because if you don't process your triggers, you're going to continuously seek external validation. Your triggers are there to help you learn about yourself. And I think that's the important piece. There's no separation in your healing and you walking through your triggers. You need to walk through your triggers in order to heal, in order to not seek validation. The first step in giving yourself an opportunity to analyze and observe your trigger is hitting the pause button. You got to hit the pause button. You have to give yourself a moment when you feel it coming on in your body, because as you said before, it happens first in your body and your body has a response to it. It's stored memory of an experience. It's telling you it's your intuition alerting you. Something feels funny here. Whether it's reminding you of a past situation or whether it's something in that moment that's not sitting right with you. Give yourself a pause and allow yourself some space to analyze it. If you can't do it in that moment, come back to it later and excuse yourself from whatever circumstances you have in order to give yourself that space. What you need to do when you do analyze it is first put yourself in the observatory position. You need to become the active observer, like you're replaying a YouTube video. Let me just watch my experience and lovingly decide how it made me feel and why did it make me feel that way? Is it the person? Is it a past experience that it's reminding me of? Is it other lifetime karma, trauma, whatever stuff that you're working on surfacing, whatever? Give yourself the opportunity to observe without getting your emotional reaction brought to the surface. And you have to, that's why you got to acknowledge it and pause yourself, because you got to give yourself a minute to check in. And this is the check-in part. You know,
Your body gives you those cues and clues because you feel the blood heat up, you feel it pump faster. Sometimes you can actually feel it crawling up your face.
Yes.
Because the blood pressure changes in those triggered moments. And thank you, body. Thank you, my human body, for giving me those warning signs. So I know that right now is not the time to talk, type, or text.
Right.
Now is the time to pause.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, instead of being able to respond to the lack of validation that I'm apparently needing for that given moment, I'm just going to react to it.
Right. And that's not what you want to do.
I'm going to point my finger at somebody else saying that they're the problem, when in actuality, it's my lack of understanding and appreciating myself that's causing that trigger.
Right. Right. Once we come to that conclusion and we understand, we ask ourselves why, we ask ourselves Where is this coming from? How is this happening in the way that it's happening? Is it because of a repeat pattern within myself that I need to shift my perspective on and do something different? And this is where the piece starts to now shift yourself, and you start transmuting it, is determining what it is in your experience that you projected outward that is allowing this to come into your space. So what are you lacking? What is it that needs validation within you that is coming out in this triggered way? And when you analyze that lovingly, and I say lovingly and with compassion, because sometimes we judge ourselves. That judgment piece has to get dropped. And that's where the compassion comes in and the understanding. Because you know what? It ain't always pretty. When we're in survival mode, we're like, oh, God, ew. I didn't realize that I was doing this.
Depending on which researcher you're talking to, that survival mode is the one that we are trying to overcome in our entire life.
But it kept us alive when we needed it.
Exactly. And the adrenal gland used to be where our solar plexus is. They were constantly in flight and in fright because we were trying to survive.
Right.
But as we became more intelligent, more understanding of what was actually going on, and as time and we evolved, and we started creating ways where it was easier to survive, then we still couldn't relax and enjoy. But as time goes on, we're learning more and more ways to do that.
Right.
But it's still uncomfortable. And depending on which researcher you talk to, or which therapist, counselor, life coach, depending on what modality they've followed and understood and what understanding they have, may or may not agree with that statement.
Yeah. And everyone's got to have their own journey, their own healing. So not everyone's going to resonate with some modalities. They may resonate only with some. So however they need to heal themselves, they need to heal themselves. But ultimately, all those modalities are tools for them to use to analyze within themselves, because the only one who can actually do any of the work and any of the actual healing is yourself. And that is by shifting your perspective. Okay, so I see now what I am missing. What am I seeking validation for? I see what it's reminding me of, the situation. I understand where I went wrong, quote unquote, because there is no right or wrong. But like as far as self-analysis and determining what you need to shift within yourself. So then what do you do from there? Well, you have to determine what's a healthier thought pattern and behavior that I can implement in my own experience, so that I no longer, or I can at least begin the process of eliminating this trigger, because it takes time and it takes several experiences in order for your body to get used to this new mindset and way of being, because our bodies are a little slower than the rest of us. And that's okay. But we need to shift ourselves.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, you weren't done.
No, it's all good. I was just going to mention that it's that taking action towards something different piece that will help you get to the healing that you need.
And when it comes to learning how to self-validate, because that's where a lot of the healing needs to start, is liking yourself, loving yourself, feeling comfortable in your own skin, regardless of your limitations, your external factors. Doesn't matter what kind of hell you think your world is. It's still, the outer world cannot fix you. The outer world cannot lift you up unless you are willing to lift yourself up.
Right.
To like yourself, to give yourself compliments, to start your day off with, Oh my God, I am such an amazing person because I know how to make the perfect cup of coffee for myself.
Yes.
Looking at yourself in the mirror every morning and saying, we got this. You got this. I
Right.
like you. I love you. You're beautiful. Saying things like this directly to yourself.
Right. Right.
I can't remember her name, but there's um, a lady that I've followed, a young lady that I've followed on TikTok. And one of the suggestions that she gave to help with feeling better about yourself, to start your day off right, is to high five yourself in the mirror.
Oh, that's fun. I love that.
If you're having a crap day when you wake up and the last thing you want to do is get up, do it anyway. Get up.
Yeah.
Those are the mornings that you need to go to the mirror and say, good morning, beautiful. High five yourself in the mirror. Say, we got this.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you right now, the looks that I'm sure that we're getting as people are watching this are probably like, yeah, right. I gave that same look.
Here's the thing. When you do
Until
that,
I tried it.
Yes. When you do that, you got this thing for yourself, and you do that validation thing for yourself with regards to, I'm amazing, I'm this, I'm whatever. I think what makes it a challenge for folks is they're not proving it to themselves. We're very science-minded, material-minded, programmed beings. So we need to have proof. So where are we going to find this proof? And that goes back to what I was mentioning earlier. When you're observing yourself and reflecting, you have to find that you're seeking validation for that which you're seeking validation for within your own experience, proving it that you've already got it. So you have to prove your affirmations to yourself by observing your own history and seeing that you are that already. You just have to acknowledge yourself. And that's the piece
And
that
to the viewers, if anybody's ever had an experience that they have felt invalidated by someone, bring that up right now. Bring that to your mind right now. What that experience made you feel, why you felt invalidated in that moment. There is your starting point. There is your trigger. Okay.
right.
But what caused that trigger? Here's the fun part. It don't matter. It was just a thought. It don't matter what you weren't being validated for, or whatever Freudian, it started in childhood reason that so many people dig for.
Yeah.
Thing is, in that moment, somebody said something to you that you felt like they were dismissing you, that what you said didn't matter, because of other times that that's happened.
Right.
But them saying that to you and the reaction that you had, whether it was you fell into silence, whether you ripped them a new one, or fell into a depression, that was indication that you felt that way, and that what they said is a way that you felt, correct or not. It's a way that you felt about yourself. And that is where the switch and the flip needs to start. Because if you feel a certain way about yourself based on something that someone else says, you don't like that aspect of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What
And
brings up.
yeah, absolutely. And I feel as though that's how we're programmed. So I think folks also need to recognize that everyone's having their own little experience, and everyone's interpreting things based on their personal interpretation of their own experience. They could project whatever their programming is out onto you and make you feel like you're missing something when you're not. And then if you decide to adopt their perspective, when it doesn't resonate with you, you feel this void, you feel this lack. So that goes back to, you're not responsible for other people's emotions. You're not responsible for how other people perceive you or receive you or project onto you. You're only responsible for yourself and how you feel about yourself. And you're only responsible for healing your own needs. And that'll help. Get comfortable with not giving a crap about other people's perspective.
How much do we see this?
Yes.
Right. And how many times do we see this?
A lot.
And hear this. And while that may be true,
right,
just to continue on this tag, while it may be true that somebody else did an action to you that created this response that you're having, are they still doing it?
Right.
And do you need validation that they're not going to? Well, that's up to you, not them.
Right.
So if you're allowing somebody to continue to do something to you after they've stopped doing it, my friends, that's on you.
Yeah. And it's a process. It takes time. It takes mental, conscious decision to self-reflect, to analyze, to pause yourself, to give yourself an opportunity to see yourself through a different perspective that you create, a new narrative that you decide to create for yourself that feels like you can relax your nervous system. Are you safe to be around yourself? If you're seeking if you're seeking from others to tell you how you feel about yourself, or to tell you that you're wherever enough or whatever it is that you need to know, then you're not giving yourself the respect that you deserve and the safety that you need in order to not seek external validation and to be able to discern what's healthy.
Totally.
Yeah. Yes. And I don't know how much longer we can chat. Looking at the clock.
We're at about 33 minutes right now.
Little Miss Marie might be.
He needs another kind of validation really soon. So we will start to close this up. But one thing, when it comes to validation and the feeling that comes from that stems from a thought that was stimulated by an external stimulus.
Yes.
The way that you feel doesn't automatically happen. Right. It isn't something magical that just pops out of thin air. Sometimes, yes, that is true. And then we're left chasing our tails trying to figure out, okay, well, where did this come from? And then we find it, oh, okay, that's what it was. This is what I need to address. And this is the reasoning. But all feelings are actually thought in action. So if you recognize that you're having a thought based on something that somebody said or didn't say, and that reaction creates a feeling, there's your first step. To recognize that you're having that thought and feeling connection based on what you're hearing, seeing, experiencing. And once you recognize that and recognize that this isn't something that you want to think about, well, thoughts are like clouds in the sky that cover up the sun. They don't stay there forever.
They don't. And thoughts are your programming. You're in charge of your thoughts, because ultimately you get to decide how to rewire your brain and what thoughts you're going to assign to those emotions, because ultimately those two need to be married so that you are in sync with yourself. And so that's a process as well. And that process comes from processing whatever it is these triggers are, and shifting your perspective and viewing yourself through that compassion and really maintaining responsibility, self-accountability, but with
Right.
compassion.
And that's where good validation comes in, is that
Yeah.
self-accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Because I figured that we should
Absolutely.
go ahead and wrap this up, but wrap it up on a positive level where we give a few examples of positive validation, like if you're a singer and you're about to go and do a performance and you're practicing, I need someone else to listen to make sure that I'm getting the timing down right and that the vocals are good. That's a
Yes.
positive validation. If you've just started a new job and there's a set routine that is expected of the employees in order for production to go the way that it should, am I doing this correctly? Because I want to make sure that it's done right. That is positive validation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's validation that's positive in different aspects of your life too. Even as a professional, you and I need to hear feedback from our clients so that we know we get validation and receive the understanding that we are helpful, that it is
Absolutely.
in alignment with what their needs are and we're fulfilling their needs. So that's positive affirmation. I
Mhm.
mean, that's positive validation also. Yep. You need
Right.
validation from your significant other in relationships. You need to feel like you're heard and understood by your significant other. So that's positive affirmation. And I use that word need lightly because we are supposed to give it to ourselves, but there are certain circumstances where it is healthy in maintaining a level of connectedness to that individual. If it is that more intimate setting, then it's healthy to give loving
Right.
validation. It comes in all kinds of ways. Oh, and I tell folks too, if they struggle, because a lot of
It
people
really
struggle to
does.
validate themselves and affirm themselves. I tell them, start with the compliments that you receive from people who you trust. If you're struggling to receive
Yes.
compliments, it's because you're not seeing them within yourself. So start with those that you receive from people that are valid sources, that matter to you, that are truthful with you, and prove it.
Yes, because false valid you don't want to get.
Yeah,
You don't want the false valid, the people that are
right,
just pretending to,
right.
and then they just appease you because they've seen your freakouts and your
Yes,
explosions. The people that
right.
actually are there. And if you don't have those people, seek them out.
Yes.
Seek out
And
coaches like myself and Diane
yeah,
who sit and
yes.
listen without judgment. Because, like one of my mentors, David Key, he believes that every person on this planet is beautiful, and every person on this planet
Mhm,
is born with mental wellness.
mhm.
I agree.
Yes, me too.
I'm going to tell you where you screwed up. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be authentic with you, but I'm going to listen without judgment.
Right.
And so is Diane. And I think that we're going to wrap it up there. And we will be back
Micah, I am
hopefully next
so
weekend with
grateful. This is
another one.
fantastic. I am
It
very
is. I
grateful.
had a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank
Yes.
you so much. This is a
So
great conversation. I look forward to more conversations.
me too. And be sure to look up Diane DeBiasi on Facebook. I'm going to try and put a link to her Facebook page as well as mine. And I also have a group on Facebook called Evolve and Merge, where I run my transformation coaching practice as well. So until the next time, this is Phoenix Talks, and we are out of here.
Catch you next time.